Hello, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning into the Anyone You're All podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, and today, it's a new age. It's a new day. It's actually the 250th 4th of July for the United States. Congrats on that, guys. Good job. But it's a new tone. It's a new era for the podcast, especially. We're just going to be a lot more genuine. Just myself. Just one take. Mostly one take, unless I really mess up. But, I still have some things I'd like to go over for today, but the tone is going to be a lot more casual. Hence why today's episode is called A Casual Conversation. And happy July 4th. So with that in mind, there's a couple things I'm going to go over. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to chat a little bit. Now, reason B, this is a talk show, moreover than an educational platform. The other videos that I hope to make on this channel are going to be more geared towards education. But I found that it was difficult to kind of do the podcast in the same way that I wanted to do it, kind of just being like my take on things. In 1 year out, we get information, we share it without bias. But then it became more of a, hey, I have to do like a week or 2 weeks of research and then multiple takes per episode. And it's like, I don't think that's what I want to do for the podcast. So instead, we're going to be doing a different series, which is going to be called What Is with John. And we'll do that in the future. I'm very excited for it. I'm working on the first episode now. You'll have to see when that comes out. Also, this is basically just my take on global events, local events, national events, whatever it be. And that's going to be how the podcast will likely be going forward. We'll have people on for special occasions if I want to talk about certain things. But overall, it's just going to be my take on a couple things. So what are we going to talk about today? What are the new topics? What are the topics? Well, we have the end of the Iran War, the 250th, let's say the birthday of the United States, and the shifting sands of the political element in our political atmosphere as the United States. So, first and foremost, I want to say happy 250th birthday. It doesn't quite line up. This is the 250th 4th of July, which is just a celebration of Independence Day. I believe the legislature actually came together on the 2nd of July, and so that's what the Founding Fathers thought was going to be the day of significance, but instead it's just the day that we celebrate, which is July 4th. So, in reality, the birthday of the United States was actually 2 days ago, but oh well. And it's also not necessarily 1776. That's when we declared our independence from Britain, but we ratified the Constitution in 1789. So you decide what exactly is the first or the formation of the United States. Whatever, it doesn't matter as much. What matters is what happens today, what the United States is today. I need a haircut, let me just say that. I got a lot of hair on this head, so if I get too crazy, it starts getting all in my face. Don't mind, I'm, brushing it off. Anyway, what happened to the United States? My goodness, what happened to this country? I think I wrote on here just oof, ... That's great. Or that's for a different part. But either way, so basically post 9/11, the United States has been a surveillance state in all forms. It's been encroaching on your individual liberties, on your personal freedoms, outlined in the Constitution for basically the past 25 years. Unfortunately, wickedly unfortunately. And then we kind of have a problem where it's like this is becoming a command economy where the people with the most money at the top kind of dictate the rules for everybody else. It's not so much a free market, right? We're leaning into an oligarchy. It seems that the people that have power in this country also have a lot of money, are also our leaders, are also the most the wealthiest and the richest in this country, also have the most power politically in this country. That's an oligarchy. So it's just confusing to say, we're here to celebrate the 250th birthday of America. Somewhere in the past 25 years, America as we know it died, croaked, cannot resuscitate. We need, something to change. I'm not going to say we need a revolution, we need something new, but we definitely need some serious change. I think the incumbent president is a tyrant. I think that's just like hands down a very simple thing to say these days. I think I'll look back on this video and be like, yep, I was right to say that. But historically, we've never had a president like Donald Trump, so it's just kind of a punch in the nutsack to say happy anything for 250th. The republic is gone as we know it, unfortunately. So what kind of things kind of bolster that feeling? Well, how about the end of the Iran War, or the anomalous end of the Iran War, which isn't really a thing because there's not really an end yet. So we have the 14-point Memorandum of Understanding, which is just basically, we're not really engaged in war. We haven't declared war, so there's no real peace talks that we need outside of this. It's called the Memorandum of Understanding. Two countries that become signatories, they sign a document that say we're not going to fight anymore. That basically ends the conflict, right? However, if there's a country that's not a signatory, but they're still doing things like Israel, like in Lebanon, which if that's becoming part of the deal for Iran to say, hey, we're only going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and not strike any commercial vessels that have gone through if Israel stops its ground invasion in Lebanon, except Lebanon and Israel are not signatories of this memorandum. So what is that going to do? So that's like secondary to this part. So it costs the U.S. taxpayer about $130 billion. That's what Moody's had assessed. I looked this up today. It's about $136 billion. That's because of gas prices. That's because of other changes in the economy and global supply changes. And that's because of the actual cost. It was about $29 billion for the taxpayer for the expense for the military to carry out strikes as they did against Iran. And then there's the $300 billion reconstruction fund. What? Whoa. Huh? What? Apparently this is a real thing. $300 billion going to Iran because we bombed them. And why did we bomb them? Because they were developing a nuclear weapon. The nuclear weapon that last year we said we destroyed their silos or not their silos, their faculties for. But then before that, we were in the Iran deal that Donald Trump got us out of. That basically said that they were going to develop a nuclear weapon. So now we're giving them $300 billion. What? This is an unequivocal loss. This is a loss. The people, I don't think there's a person on planet Earth at this point, whether they're the most stoic and hardened American on continent America, that thinks that the end of the Iran war was a United States victory in any capacity. This is a loss. The no new wars guy, the better government spending guy, is now losing a war he said he was never going to start and giving $300 billion of your dollars to an adversarial country. That's that 10,000 IQ play we're just misunderstanding as average Americans. Yeah, my bad. So yeah, and on top of this, whatever this memorandum of understanding was, well, Trump struck Iran after Iran had struck some commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. So we're back at square one, basically. God. Why? Just why? Pretty much. I don't really have much else to say beyond that. Just like why. Why are we doing this? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't really have much else to say on that. I think everybody is pretty much scratching their head the same way, thinking, why are we doing these things? Why are these decisions our government is making? I don't know, guys. I'm not there. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today, just kind of like real nice, quick and short, is this shifting sands, which is just what I call it. It's the changing political atmosphere. So the question I have for myself here is, what is the Republican Party July 2026? What is the Republican Party July 2026 in the United States, obviously? Well, it seems to be a more fractioning type of coalition here. I see a lot of people online ready to back Thomas Massie for his president's. He's likely going to run for president in 2028. I don't know if he's going to run as a regular Republican or if he's going to call himself something different. That'll probably be, and I've tracked this for a little bit, that'll probably be the tipping point for a lot of people to consider themselves conservatives over MAGA Republicans. That'll be the divide that grows there. So that is kind of the difference today, is if you are still beholden to Trump, you are MAGA Republican, right? If you're not and you're still a Republican, you're not really a Republican anymore. You probably could do better to call yourself something different. And in the same capacity, what is a Democrat, or what is the Democrat Party in July 2026? Well, because of a lot of the victories in New York especially, which is my state, I get to see a lot of this, not necessarily firsthand, but kind of like secondhand, on friends' stories and whatever else. There's been a strong surgence of Democratic Socialists victories in parts of New York. Obviously, with Zoran Mamdani being the New York City mayor, which I think is a great thing. I think he's done great so far. I don't live there. I can't say for certainty how certain things are, but And some other victories as well in New York. They seem to be getting a lot of traction. They're pushing now against the institution of the Democrats that are more corporatists rather than socialists, for sure. So it's kind of like the capitalists of their party versus the socialists of their party, which is very interesting. So the thing here is the two prevailing groups now, or I would say the most prevalent groups, are the MAGA Republicans, which are probably going to go away or become something different, which that's going to be some other far-right group, which I'm not excited for. And then the constitutional conservatives will probably maintain some portion of the Republican Party, whatever it is. But now the split is going to be on the Democrat side. It's going to be some version of a corporatist or institutional Democrat versus the Democratic Socialists. And I say, wow, that's going to be quite the difference, because these internal factions are warring. That gives other factions the opportunity to breathe. And so for me, especially, I kind of do want to see something like this. I've been working on a policy, or I've been working on a conjuration, I should say, of a proclamation of a new system for the United States. And it's not anything that we haven't done already. So for some people, they like to say they're ardent capitalists. They believe that capitalism should be unregulated, and the best form of capitalism is one that has no regulation, no government intervention. There are people like that in this country. Yeah. On the other side of that, there's the socialists or the communists. You know, you have to remember that socialism is the economic forum within a communist society. Communism is the governmental force. So we have capitalism, and we would say that we live in a free market society, right? That's like capitalism. But our governmental force is federalism, or what we could say it's democracy or whatever else. It's sure. But to say what's the difference between communism and our standard for society? It's that we believe in dictations of power. And in a communist society, they don't believe that there should be dictations of power. All the power should rest in the people's hands, and institutions like corporations shouldn't exist outright. Money also shouldn't exist. Religion also shouldn't exist. This is the communist ideology. This is what communism basically is. Not to say that's a good or a bad thing, that's just what it is. I will say there's a lot of things in communism that I don't like. Right? What a surprise. Whoa. There's a few things that I think that we could probably work out, but I don't think communism has a place in the United States. I think an adaptation of socialism definitely does, because we already have socialism here. We have things like Social Security, which is not necessarily socialism because we pay a tax for that, right? We pay for Social Security, and that subsidizes the people on Social Security today. It's not going to some fund that eventually gets paid out in proportion to each person. No. The people paying into Social Security today are subsidizing the people on Social Security. That's how it works. The money that you are paying on Social Security that gets taken out of your paycheck, it's going into the pockets of somebody else who needs it now. It's not getting stashed away so that you can, in the future, reap the benefits of the money you've paid. That's not how it works. That's why there's a likelihood by the time you get to 65 or retirement age and you want to collect Social Security, it might not be there. Because that relies on the current generation to have a job that is getting taxed for Social Security, right? And Republicans want to get rid of Social Security. They say it's the biggest spending. It's one of the biggest spendings, and I'm sure it is. But we have a tax for that. That's why it's not socialism. Socialism is the idea that the government will subsidize not only industry but people just because they need it, which is an okay thing, honestly. But when you try to apply it to our systems, it doesn't necessarily work, because that means that there's some people that are doing the work, creating the capital, and then there's some people that are not, and they're receiving the benefit. And that's okay, because you have to create a society that allows for all types of people to exist. If you're in a wheelchair, we're not going to say, well, you can't work as a construction worker from the wheelchair, so there's no reason that a society should, pander to somebody like you. That's not true at all. But what I am saying, for the sake of our argument here, is that robust capitalism and devout socialism are the two polar opposites on this extreme, and we should not approach either of them. There is an idea I've been crafting that I call pragmatic social capitalism. Scary, right? It's called pragmatic social capitalism. It's basically doing things that are correct for society, not based on a party. That's the pragmatism, right? We're not saying the Democrats say we should do this, so we're going to work on this, or the Republicans say we should do this, so we're going to work on this. It's the people of the country have decided what is best, and they have voted for whoever that is going to do those things, all right? And then the social capitalism, it just means that the capitalism is not unchecked, it's not unregulated, and the priority in the system that exists for whether we call it social capitalism, whether we call it whatever, it's not to facilitate profit. It is to facilitate the well-being of people. through profit, yeah, that could happen too, and that's usually the goal, especially in our society. We believe the more money institutions make, the higher that could benefit, the higher standard of living that everybody living in this society can take advantage of. But that's not the case, because most corporations are not interested in bettering the lives of their workers or the people around them. They're solely interested in making money. And so we have to flip the script here. And you could say that's socialism, you could say that's communism, you could say that's whatever. In the 1890s, we had the closest thing to basically unregulated capitalism. And what happened? People died. Workers died. Consumers died. People, in a lot of cases because of unregulated capitalism. Whether it was child labor, whether it was unsafe working conditions. And those things are expensive to have to create. Oh, I can charge a kid, I can pay a kid less if they work for me. But a kid is more likely to make a mistake. And, there's also high mortality for, unsupervised children in workplaces. Well, who would have thought? And if we allow for unregulated capitalism the way we had in the 1890s, that wood filler is now the main ingredient in cereals. And animal byproduct is now your sausage, not the parts that you were hoping to buy. Or whatever it is. Because if profit is the number one incentive in any system, then the person will come secondary to the money that they can create. And that's not the system that I think we should live in, but that's close to the system we exist in today. Right? So I don't have a problem that people can't necessarily do all the work that other people in society can do. That's fine. What is the old adage? To each according to their ability, for each according to their need. I could prescribe to that a little, or I can confide in that, or subscribe to that ideology a bit. I think that's fine, because in the same way, I know somebody actually who's running for politician. I won't say who they are, but they don't have access, like they can't use their arms and legs like we can. They're in a motorized chair. That doesn't mean they're a worthless person or they can't accomplish things. And I like some of their policies too. I think they're a good person. So in that way, we have to accommodate. So ardent capitalism is not the solution. Devout socialism is not the solution. A mix of the two, like what I call pragmatic social capitalism. That's just an idea that I had. That's pretty much all I have today, really. I thought this would go on for a little bit longer. This is honestly fine. I could just freeball for a little bit, and we could just talk about whatever. It is the 250th anniversary, technically, you could say, of the formation of the United States. What does that really mean? Well, I do believe we're kind of at the latter half of the American empire, and that somebody really needs to come along and kind of rejuvenate the entire society that we live in, and that's from the top down, unfortunately. Whether that be the systems, the economy, the state of mind, the general apparatus that people exist in within their state of being every day. What I mean is, you live in your house, you tend to your garden, you take care of your dogs. Those are things that you do every single day. That contributes to the American mindset and the American ideology and the way of life, and say, I have the freedom to do these things, I'm happy enough. Right? And I don't think that we live in a society where people could even do those things really anymore, to where it's getting so difficult to just do the bare minimum, have the bare necessity. It doesn't seem like there's necessarily all the functionality of this country that there used to be. I would say there's definitely not. I would definitely be willing to take a larger look, but I can guarantee that the systems do not work at the same capacity that they used to 30 years ago. I'm sure we have a lot of other things as well. I mean, 30 years ago, there wasn't even gay marriage in the United States, so we could obviously say things were much, much different then. But the differences, especially when it comes to, say, the housing market or retirement or just, what people have chosen for priorities in their life. When I was a kid, the idea was like, oh yeah, you get a job, you go to college, you get a job, you get a house, you get married, you have kids, yada, yada, yada. Congrats, you're living the American lifestyle, right? But now there's so many things that are upsetting just to contribute to the American lifestyle, the American society, that a lot of people say is secondary to their ideology in life. To say that's not a priority anymore. I don't care to own property. I don't care to have a marriage, to have a spouse. I don't care to have kids. And these are things that, somebody said it pretty well in just some off-the-cuff video on Instagram. It was basically like this. You have to really stress out a mammal for it to not want to reproduce. And I was like, wow, that's a good point. But it's like, well, we live in a society where it's not as easy as you just say, okay, I want to have kids, so let's just do that. But then I thought, well, that's the problem entirely. We live in a society where it's not as easy to procreate, to have things as it should be. And so people don't. it's not that hard to understand. A lot of people are thinking there's some crazy theory behind the reason that Gen Z is unmotivated to participate in the American workforce like other generations have been. It's because it's working harder for less. And it's like that every year. Whether it's inflation or whether it's just how the job market's been or whether how people are choosing to treat their employees. I, for a while, had a very interesting story about a boss I worked with who I regarded as the worst boss I ever had. Earlier this year, I worked a job that trumped that guy like twofold. He was by far the worst boss I ever had. And I'm thinking, it's no surprise that people are like quitting a job without a backup and they just don't care. Because if this is how bad things have gotten to where all of these bosses create a culture that's just super toxic, they don't have regard for their employees. They think that giving their employee like a 25-cent raise is going to make or break their entire business. Let me tell you something, as a business owner especially. If the difference between you or your business sinking or swimming is anywhere in the realm of not being able to pay your employee an extra 25 cents an hour, which is like a couple bucks a day, ultimately a couple bucks a week, maybe $100 a month, then you have failed as a business owner, or better yet, you just shouldn't have that employee. That's really what it comes down to. And the culture of the United States as it stands now, especially for employers, is that they just don't care about their employees. They just don't care because they don't have to. Because there's so many people in this country now that can go and fill that position that don't know how bad it is, that can do what they need to do for 6 months, and then peace out and get that position filled. That's just how it is. And so nobody's falling in love with the work that they're doing. Are you out of your mind? I don't know a single person that loves their job. Nobody loves they tolerate their job. And no, maybe you're not supposed to love your job. Maybe you're only supposed to tolerate it or whatever it is. But in the same capacity, why not? I've had jobs that I loved. Most of them were my own business, so that's, one thing. But there's definitely things that I did that I was like, wow, I can't wait until I don't have to do this anymore. Working in a factory or working in a warehouse is definitely one of them. But in the same capacity, like, the parts of the jobs that I disliked the most, it was never like, oh, God, the work is so difficult, or, oh, man, the hours aren't what I was hoping for. It's always the boss or the pay and the difference between that. How shitty the boss is and how little the pay is. There's a range that says, okay, if the boss is this much shitty, but the pay is this much, I can tolerate it. But if the boss is this much shitty and the pay is this much, then I can't tolerate it. You can't see my hand; it's all the way over here. But that's one of the things, unfortunately. And so I've heard a lot of criticism, especially for Gen Z, especially for my generation, and it kind of is sourced from they don't work hard, they don't want to work, yada, yada, yada. Society is not catering to the people that are now going to be running society. So instead of trying to force people into their box, you have to cater to the new people coming up through society. If you say, wow, I'm trying to hire Gen Z, but no Gen Z wants to work this job, reevaluate the position. Because it's probably not Gen Z entirely. Gen Z is the generation that's saying, fuck it, we give up. We're not doing this shit anymore. We're not contributing to things we don't want to contribute to. We're not partaking in systems that don't benefit us. So, if you think that we're going to blindly do what millennials did and what Gen X did, we're not going to. And that's kind of the reality of the situation. Is that a lot of people say, oh, that's lazy. It's like, it's not necessarily lazy. It's just choosing to not participate. And if you want to say it's lazy because we're not propping up a corporate entity that doesn't give a fuck about us, I call that lazy. I don't care. I don't have very much regard for people like that. And in the same way, I do understand that there's a lot of privilege in Gen X. Or sorry, not Gen X. Gen Z. There's a lot of privilege to think like, things should be a certain way just because it's our time to kind of like experience them. We have to work for that, obviously. We have to work for the changes that we want to see. But in the same way, if everything's just going to get shoved off to the next generation to fix, and it's our turn to assume that that pillar of, hey, it's our turn to fix it, we'll be those people in this community, then you have to help us, right? You have to be willing to take our understanding of the world and say, let's make things the way you want it to be if you're going to be the people to fix things. right? So if you want the systems to be operated by Gen Z eventually, then you have to allow for Gen Z to change the systems. Simple as that. I'll be so for real with you. After Elon Musk became a trillionaire for a little bit, a part of me truly died. A part inside of me realized that there is not a single thing that anybody can get me or compel me to do simply by giving me money. Money does not equal anything for me at this point. Yeah, it does, if I could use it, right? If somebody said, John, here's $1 billion, scratch your nuts and smell it, I'm going to be like, yeah, I could probably do that. But there's not really anything at this point realistically. Like, somebody's not going to do that to me, so it doesn't matter. Like, money doesn't mean anything. And that's a critical error for your system, because at this point, the only thing that the United States dollar has a backing of is public trust and public interest in the petrodollar system, right? And we've seen the failures of the petrodollar system already. So if you're fiscal currency... I actually had a little bit more that I wanted to say, but my phone died, unfortunately. I thought we lost the entire recording, but we're just going to upload what we have for today. But thank you very much for watching, as always, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys again soon. Peace out!